And then, someone brought him a plate of sweets, and I remember he took a gulab jamun and he tossed it in his mouth from his lap. Thinking that was so incredible. I've tried it in the past, and it just lands on my forehead or over my shoulder, but it was so incredible to watch him. Everything he did was so perfect and aristocratic.
Oh, these are the horses. Well, this is interesting. My father made the horses. My father's a dramatic Holocaust survivor. His heart had flames coming out of it from the Holocaust in the Warsaw Ghetto. And so he built these horses. He painted them with fire and with smoke. They looked as though they were smoldering. And he put them on the front of the Rath Yatra cars, which was quite a contribution. So 4 for each Rath Yatra car. I wanted to engage him, so I asked him to do it. But when I saw the horses, I was absolutely horrified. They looked like horses of the apocalypse coming out of hell. So my father was very proud of them. They were rather dramatic horses. My parents, I should say, were separated for 40 years. So my mother was also at the Rath Yatra festival, and that my mother and father hadn't seen each other for, maybe 5 years, My mother walks up and said, "Who has made these horses?" She recoils in horror, seeing these smoldering, burned, crazed horses with wild rolling eyes. "Who has made these horses?" And I look at her and say, "My dad made them." She said, "Well, this will never do." So she went and grabbed buckets of paint and painted them all up with nice, like, the merry-go-round design, caparisoned and white and clean and healthy-looking horses. And there they looked at these horses together, and they sort of felt, yes, this is what we've done to honor our son's choice. And I could see that they both felt great satisfaction. And from my perspective, as a budding transcendentalist, 2 years in the movement, I thought, this is their devotional service. This is the moment that was created for them by Lord Krishna to accomplish something in their lives and to give my brother and myself permission to go forward with the power of the Pitris behind us.
I got the Krishna book published in Japan by Dainapan. I had to go there to supervise. This is the first book with color photos. This was very special. The windows to the spiritual world. I went there, I think it was May, and I told Dainapan, I met with all the executives, that there was a festival in July, and I wanted to bring the book, the finished book, to the festival in San Francisco. So it meant that they had 2 months to produce the book. And they said, impossible. I said, well, there is no impossible. You have to do it. Because I want to present the book to the spiritual master at the festival. And they said, well, it's impossible, but anyway, we'll try. So they worked so hard. And I would go every day and push them. Every day I would ask them, are you going to have it ready? Are you going to have it ready? And they said, it's impossible, it's impossible. And then I booked my return flight to arrive in San Francisco the day of Rath Yatra. And actually, they didn't have it ready. And I said, this is going to have a serious repercussions for our future business with you and so on. And then I went to the airport. So as I was walking up the stairs to get on the plane, this big black limousine drove out onto the tarmac. It had flags on it. Dainapan was one of the largest companies in Japan. They printed Time magazine and everything. This long black limousine, and it comes right to the airplane. And out come all the Dainapan executives, in their blue suits. There were about 5 of them. So I went down, and they all bowing, from the waist, and they gave me this carton. The stewardess is saying, come on, you got to get on the plane, they had to take off. So I didn't, I just took the carton, I thanked them, and got on the plane. Couldn't wait for the plane to take off. It tore open the carton, and there's this silver shining Krishna book. It was so ecstatic. Then I start going through the book and looking at every pictures and, how it all turned out. And there was this man next to me. He was a business executive, American. And he saw me, he said, what do you got there? And I said, oh, this is, my spiritual master. I printed the book in Japan. It's the first book. And he said, how much is it? And I said, whatever. I said, $10 or something, which was a good amount in those days. He said, okay, I'll take it. So then, I came to San Francisco, went right away to Prabhupada's apartment. I brought in the carton, presented the book to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was so pleased. Then he said, how many copies do you have? I said, well, there were 20, but now there's only 19. He said, oh, only 19? What happened to the other one? I said, well, I sold it on the plane to the person next to me. Prabhupada said, oh, very good. This is very auspicious. That the first copy was distributed. Then he ordered, he said, all these books, there were only 19 of them. He said, these should all be distributed at the Rath Yatra. And then the one that he had in his hand, and he said, and this one also.
You couldn't see the deities until they were on the Rath cart. That was one of our technicalities that we thought, had to be there. And no one should view the deities until, it was like looking at prasadam before you offer it. So nobody's going to see the deities until they get on the Rath Yatra cart. And then, when they were all up on the cart, then they would be, revealed in all their magnificence.
I think there was some disturbances going on, and Prabhupada had given Vishnu Jan the Nrsimha prayers. And Vishnu Jan had just been up with Prabhupada and came down, and we were on the street right in front of the temple. And Vishnu Jan said to all of us that Prabhupada had given him this mantra for protection of the festival. And right on the street he taught us. And I think this is the first time we chanted the Nrsimha prayers.
Myself and Gargamuni and others there, we did not want Prabhupada to go to the Rath Yatra festival. What happened was that we got threats. The Black Panthers sent word that we're going to attack your guru if you hold this festival. And they were very credible threats, so we were afraid. So we told Prabhupada that, you shouldn't go to the festival. But Prabhupada couldn't accept this. First of all, he didn't care so much about threats. But second, it was just inconceivable that Prabhupada would not go to the Rath Yatra. And Prabhupada insisted on going. And I was insisting Prabhupada not go. So Prabhupada insisted, you must take me. So Gargamuni was driving the car, and he drove very slowly, and he took a very roundabout route in order to arrive late at the festival.
Things started out well, but they quickly got worse. One of the carts had a certified weld that cracked, and Balaram's car was out of commission. The newspapers wrote an article called Harried Krishna. That was just after we were attacked by the Black Panthers. And so they had all these Black Panthers all in afros, black t-shirts, and black pants. And they attacked with some martial arts. So Brahmananda and others were fighting them. And we had poles to keep people from getting crushed under the Rath Yatra cars, very beautifully decorated poles. So we used these poles to fend them off. My father was dressed like an Old Testament prophet of old with his white beard, and he was stood there, and he had a staff. And he was crashing it onto the ground, crying, "Tolerance! Tolerance! Tolerance!" We marched literally 7 miles to the sea. At one point there were cars parked on either side, and I cried out, "Move the cars!" And 25 people would grab each car and just send it skittering. Now Subhadra's cart had an interesting miracle attached to it as well. What happened is we came along, and Shyamasundar had used a piece of mailing